ComicBase Livestream. I am Pete Bickford, and I'm going to nudge my chair ever so slightly over on this side just to get lined up here. Nothing but professionalism here at the ComicBase Livestream. I'm joined here. I have my producer in-house, Mr. Greg Hecht, and none of what you're about to see is his fault. I'll just state that for the record. But anyway, I do ComicBase. P. Bickford at Human-Computing is my email. Hopefully you caught up there because there are chances to write and get your questions answered. If you have questions, by the way, during the live stream, as always, put them in the chat as at ComicBase TV. It helps pull them out, and then we try to take it from there. Do want to say hi to folks before we get too far into things. You want to say hi to Chris Presol in the house here right now, Mike Beam. By the way, you're joining us on a Thursday. Question had come up, is Thursday going to be the new regular day? And I'm going to say, if it's okay with you guys, I prefer it. It works better in my week because I have a chance to actually finish out a lot of things I'm working at the start of the week. And most days, not today, unfortunately, we have a chance to push the week's content update so I can talk about that some. But I'm going to try for Thursday. So hopefully that's good for you guys. If not, please don't feel shy. Do send me a note, pbickford@human-computing.com, and tell me if that doesn't work out for you. But that is the tentative plan for now. So hopefully you guys can all join us. And it'll probably still be at 4 p.m. regardless of what we do. So I do want to say hi here to Chris Basols joining us from the sunny and 84-degree Philly. Mike Beam from the Pacific Northwest, considerably cooler out there. Robbie's in the house. Toledo, Greg Hecht, of course, is here. And Mike Beam says Thursday's good for him. So that is good to hear. Anyway, let's get into it a bit. A lot of stuff going on here. So the big thing we'll be talking about on the show, for 15 years, everyone's been writing about the death of the comic book industry, writing the obits and everything else. But, we've got the 2025 numbers in, as well as a lot of fairly interesting news events happening. And we'll be discussing exactly how dead are we, and we'll see how it is. Well, spoilers, there is some good news. Your local comic shop is alive and well. And we'll be talking about the entire scene of the whole thing and where we think the whole thing might be going. So, like I say, a lot of events in the field. Everything from Absolute Batman pulling in record numbers, the growth in comic shop stores, which we actually can verify at this point, which is nice. I was just complaining to Greg before the show. It's like the number one thing that vexes me about almost anything in the comics market is how hard it is to get honest numbers on anything that aren't just self-serving little exploits. But yes, we do have some numbers that we can verify, and it looks like we've done okay. And so we'll get into that some. We're talking about manga, graphic novels, bande dessinée, or BD as the French say, which means something different over there. Crowdfunded books that never touch the distributor, etc. We are, talking about all, and we'll get into it. So, all right. In the news, though, however, just comic-based front of things, the week's content update is going to be dropping tomorrow. We haven't got the Penguin books in yet, and honestly, I've been up to my eyeballs in other things that I've been working on, so I've not had a chance to fully finish out the week's content update. That said, we have added so far in the last update some 1,056. Ooh, this I have a cue to myself to flip to the next slide of the thing. Yes, I'm using AI now to go through my notes and give me cues on when to do things. So hopefully this will be slightly less half-assed than it usually is. So let's get this one onto the screen here. Yes, there we are. In last week's update, 1,056 new items, 51,986 price and issue updates, 3,177 new covers have been added, as well as upgraded ones, for a total of 1.2 million and change, and a bunch of more stuff like that. I did ask the AI, because it's like having an assistant, to come up with interesting ways of talking about the numbers, because otherwise it just winds up being a big jumble of nothing. And this is what it came up with when you talk about how many covers are in the database. This is the AI in my deal. It turns out that 1,217,416 covers, laid end to end, stretches 197 miles, which is the entire trip. If I were to get in my car right now, drive to BNA Airport in Nashville, and then hop on a plane and fly on to Tupelo, Mississippi, I would basically be just a touch over the 197 miles. But the 197 mile mark, I would be looking, I could look out the window of the plane practically basically, and see Elvis's birthplace and maybe even spot his Mama Gladys's pink convertible. That is apparently a thing that in theory could happen. Other things that are interesting in terms of the stats, because while we were doing the research on the whole thing, I decided to have it, go ahead and look a few things up. If you took the whole catalog and bought one of everything in the database, it would cost you, in theory, assuming you could locate that, which definitely remains to be seen. But in theory, its current guide price is $280.4 million. That's to buy one of everything. Newspapers forming the majority of that one because there's a lot of newspapers and so forth. But the comic portion alone, some $93 million. But if you had the $280 million burning a hole in your pocket, that would buy you one P-8 Poseidon. It's basically the Navy's sub-hunting jet. According to AI, it's a Boeing 737 full of torpedoes. My alternate purchase, which I would much prefer, get myself 4 F-35 stealth fighters, although unfortunately that is the price without armaments, which I don't even know what the point of having a stealth fighter is if you're not going to have armaments. But the other thing, and this is the part where I just got to appreciate how snarky AI can be. I mean, never tell anyone that this stuff isn't opinionated. I asked it to find an example of a government program or fraud abuse that had was somewhere in the neighborhood of the same thing. And what it came up with is point out that, oh yeah, the Pentagon blew. They went over budget on their HR system, DC HRMS, by 8 years. And I guess they spent about $35 million that was budgeted. It was supposed to get done in like a year. It took 8 years, went over budget, never shipped. And they went over budget by 8 years when Pete Hegseth finally killed it when he took office as the defense secretary, which then became Department of War secretary, and scrapped it in 2025. So this was their HR management system. So shout out to my sister Kathy if she's listening here, because that is her field. Anyway, but that's what our government blew on a system that never shipped. And the snarky part that I did not ask the HI to throw in there is they said, yeah, we cover 5.7 million items and ours shipped. You could actually open it. So thank you for that, Claude. That's a thing that happened just now. All right. So beyond that, let's see if there's any other news I want to get to on the whole thing. I avoided doing a Supergirl review because I think everyone else right now is bouncing the rubble on that one right now. So by all means, look at pretty much any YouTube channel on the planet right now, and you'll see what the world's thinking of that one. Let's just say I'm reconsidering the wisdom of my movie pass for the summer in the light of that one, although I am comforting myself by knowing that the Minions movie's coming out, very shortly, and so I'm looking forward to that. Chris Bristol says, why do something half-assed when you can do it full-ass? Yes, absolutely. And Brian Price also joining us here, as well as Xanadu Comics from Seattle. Welcome. All right, so other things I want to catch before we get into the main bit. We talked about newspapers. We talked about wasteful government programs. And now, okay, let's get into the industry story. All right, so, and then there's a cue to myself, to run the next graphic. I actually, the AI did actually come up with an infographic for the next bit, but looking at it right before showtime, because that's all I had a chance to, I just decided that no, this was terrible. I don't want to. But anyway, let's have a quick look at the state of the direct market. So right now, the direct market is it had a very good year. Let's just put it that way. And let's see if there's room for me on the screen here. Yeah, I can edge in there. Just that thing that I'm cutting off with my face is a percentage sign mark. It's nothing important. Anyway. According to ICV2, the direct market was worth $2.2 billion, billion with a buh, in 2025 they claim it grew 30% last year. Honestly, looking at other sources, I think the more sensible estimate is 15 to 18% for the direct market in comic shops. That's a bloody good year, and that comes after COVID and comes after a lot of hard breaks the industry's had. And so it was awfully good to see, driven much by things like the Absolute Universe, been a fantastic seller for the whole thing, and also a lot of variants, which we'll get into in a bit. We have we're up to about $1 billion in the comic shop sales on the whole thing. That's 2.2 billion is the total comics plus graphic novels. That is across the entire quote unquote comic book industry. So that includes your Barnes and Nobles and everything, every other place you could buy a comic type thing. And importantly, that $2.2 billion includes everything that is now under the more expansive definition called a graphic novel. So that does include your Dear Dumb Diaries and your Dogmans and your Captain Underpantses and things like that. So back when we were doing things during the Diamond eras, when you were talking about $400 billion, industry growth, that was not including those items. And that does have a huge, huge measuring effect. So keep that in mind whenever anyone tells you about the explosive, growth of the industry, is that they've also changed the measuring stick a lot. So they're not counting the same things they used to count. So definitely keep that in mind. That being said, if you're talking to self-reports from comic store owners year over year, they're definitely talking in the area of 15 to 18% is a pretty safe, year over year store number, same stores. So great to hear. I mean, we needed it. And also manga, for the people following that, about plus 8% in the book channel. Nice to see this. Another nice measurable number we're getting off of BookScan. So yeah, no, terrific to see that kind of thing because it's much needed. Now we enter the interesting part of the thing. And let me switch back to the full screen mode, which apparently is now playing over my demo computer. Apologize for that one. Let me get it off of its screensaver, which we'll talk about. Oh, of course it wants to restart. No, go away. Okay, so let's go back to the big story, which is driving the story. Yes, there are stories within stories on this show. And that is the Ripaverse. This is Eric July's comic universe, which is sold direct to consumer, or DTC, if we want to be all cool about it and everything. You might recognize characters like Isom, and that's the only one that I can summon off the top of my head at this very moment. And did I get? Yes, I did. And that's, nope, that was the wrong graphic. I apologize for that. Did I? I guess I did not load up the right. No, I just apologize. I'm just going to go back to that one now. But Eric July, very, very interesting story on him. He is a internet personality type, influencer type guy. He's from down in Texas, and he has some large number of followers. I do not have the number at my fingertips right now. He managed during the middle of COVID, when the whole world was shut down and everyone else is like, DC is decided they're going to pull away from Diamond having decided during COVID, for good reasons or bad, doesn't really matter at this point, that for a period of time they weren't going to be distributing anything at all. In Steve Geppe's, his favor, I'm going to say Steve Geppe, I've always liked the guy a lot. I think he really tried to watch out for the comic market to the best of his ability. And he was, remember, never forget, living in Maryland at the time, which was not a light lockdown state. So during the height of the pandemic, he felt that it was impossible for him to continue to distribute comic books. And so for a number of months, there were no new comic books in the world. And as a result, DC got very, very sick of that. And they decided that they were just going to, pull out of distribution with Diamond. That decision and the follow-up to it basically doomed Diamond. So Diamond is with us no more. And it's been one of the messier bankruptcies I've ever had the displeasure of watching. So they're still in their, I'd say they're death throes, but it's like they've been dead, but the corpse is still twitching and people are still wondering how to get their books back from them, 3-4 years later now in 2026. But anyway, moving on from that, in the middle of all this, a guy named Eric July took his YouTube following, said, you know what I'm going to do? I like comics. I want to write a comic book, and I'm going to get together with some really good artists and some really good colors who seem to have nothing else going on in their life right now. And I'm going to make a superhero that I've had in mind. I'm going to, come up with a big graphic novel with his adventures. And that was Isom #1. Sold something like 100,000 units of the whole thing, and was sold as a $35 graphic novel. So that's not 100,000 issues of a $5 comic book. That's 100,000 direct to consumer sales of a $5 book. Since opening up shop, he has done direct consumer business of 15 million bucks. Just him and his little tiny independent company, and that's straight to him. It's not splitting the profit with comic retailer or anything else like that. That's straight to consumer, and they're selling very expensive things. And honestly, from what I've seen of the work, I had a copy of ISOM number 1 when it first came out, and yeah, it's quality stuff. It's is it life-changing? Is it the Dark Knight? No, but is it good? Yeah, no, it's fine stuff, and I like that he's doing good stuff. It's a little pricey for me, and I gotta admit, the idea that you have to fund a Kickstarter and pay the shipping and do all the things necessary to buy it, that's a pretty high barrier to entry. So it's amazing that he's done that kind of business on the whole thing. So in the middle of this whole thing, he has done this insane direct-to-consumer business. And the really interesting thing that just happened is he just announced a deal with Hachette Book Publishing to distribute internationally through their book channels. So what does that mean? Well, that suddenly means that all those people that you saw, you see at your local Barnes and Noble, reading all those, shelves and shelves and shelves of manga, novels and stuff, they suddenly have the ability to be on the same shelves with graphic novels featuring superhero comics that aren't Marvel or DC. And so he's, taking the fight straight to the consumer, where the consumer is actually reading. And that's, the consumers who aren't already pre-sold, who aren't already in the comic industry. He's actually able to meet them right there. And presumably that also means that he can meet them at a much more competitive set of product prices. It doesn't mean that he drops the $30 or $35 graphic novel thing. The distribution end of it, you no longer coupling that with $10 or $12 on shipping and everything. You're just walking in, buying it. More importantly, you can browse it. So if someone's sitting there and they're reading the last graphic novel of My Hero Academia or One Piece, you actually can switch over there and say, oh, here's a superhero. This looks pretty cool. Let me look at this. And if you like it, you just walk up to the register and buy it. This is new for us. We haven't had this in a really long time, because it's been a really long time since a civilian who didn't have a local comic shop in their area could go out and just find a comic book. And I think this is like the best news to happen to the comic industry in forever. Now, your local comic shop owner may disagree. This is a direct, competition to them. Not that they can't open an account with Hachette themselves. And honestly, we just opened up an account, or we have one in process right now with Hachette ourselves, because we need to get on top of the offerings, through them, as well as anyone else who comes after, Eric July. If he busts the door down, it doesn't mean that you couldn't have another publisher come in. It could be IDW, it could be anyone else come in and follow into the book chain right on their heels. That would be the most optimal result of them all, is that we could actually turn your local bookstore into your local comic store, or your local graphic novel store, in a big way, in a way that goes beyond Dogman and Dear Dumb Diary. That would be freaking fantastic, and I so want that to happen. We'll see. Godspeed on him on that one, but is great news. So what does all this mean? So right now we have about $1 billion flowing through your local comic store. Again, hoorah, terrific. Now, I promised you some caveats on some of this, and here are where the caveats come in. So when Rippaverse sells a comic book, they're selling one comic that costs 7 times the price of a typical Marvel DC one, and they're not splitting the profit, which means one copy of ISOM that they sell makes them about as much money as 15 copies that DC sells or Marvel sells of their comics. And even then, he's coming with numbers that would put him in the mid-tier of a whole month of a mainline a comic like Batman or Spider-Man. So he's doing great stuff. We'll see if he can keep it up. It's going to be, again, amazing to watch him try. And again, not just him, but everyone who comes after him. I am going to learn the lesson that I have to kill my phone before the show. I swear to God. I I thought I'd get lucky. I stared at my phone before the show and said, "Do I need to mute this?" I thought, "Nah, the guys at the office got this." Okay. Anyway, that's the kind of professionalism I'm used to here, and that's what we aim to keep up. Anyway, but back to Eric July. Great model, great to see what comes down to the whole thing, and it's really wonderful to see. So those are authentic readers. There were some people who bought multiple copies of ISOM #1. You certainly could buy it in the pack where, for $120 you get all 4 covers of whatever the thing is, and there were covers that were more rarer than other covers and so forth. I'm sure there was a bit of a speculator market. I mean, I do know that after I got done reading our copy of ISOM #1, like everything else that comes through ComicBase, it went out on Atomic Avenue, where anyone who's interested in looking for comic books, www.atomicavenue.com, you could find it. And at some point I sold off my copy of ISOM #1 for same price or higher than I paid for it, and that was great, and it made 2 people happy. But by and large, he was selling, when you're talking about who he's selling to individual readers. This is not exactly the same story that's happening with the other big success story of last year, which is the comic stores. Based on the back of the Absolute line in particular, yes, they did a lot of money. So, and I'll see if I can make the type large enough to read my notes on this one. And yes, there are a lot of notes to get into. So, and I point out to myself, yes, ISOM #1, invisible, by the way, on the sales charts. It does not appear in that, that $1 billion, comic book industry or your comic store sales, because they weren't sold through the comic stores. It doesn't appear in the $2.2 billion overall comic sales, because again, they were never reported anywhere. So that the $15 million he's made over the last 3 years, that's bonus on top of all that. But anyway, just an interesting thing to consider. Anyway, so going back to the #1 success story of the universe in the last year, Absolute Batman #1, 400,000 copies for the full event, $2 million at retail. And that was great. However, first of all, you have the cost and the cost disparity between ISOM and Marvel is that certainly factors into that one. But the other thing that's happening in a really big way is that a great deal of the DC and Marvel sales is basically amounts to channel stuffing. Channel stuffing is when you shove a lot of product into the distribution channel and you hope to God they sell it on the other end, but because it's sold in the direct market, you don't actually care. So the way this works in the variant game in particular is there are a number of times where, like, I need to buy 25, 50, 100, 500, sometimes I've heard of 1,000 copies of a particular issue to be allowed to order one copy of a particular variant. 10 to 1s, 50 to 1, so forth. Very common. I was just doing this week's order form, processing the corrections on those ones. Pretty much every Marvel mainline title comes in offering at least one 25 to 1 variant as part of the product mix, as well as just the ones that are just generic variants. I printed several different wrappers for the same cover, which the same comic, which is what a variant is just in general. But the incentive covers, the ones where you have to buy a certain ratio in order to be allowed to buy one of those. So the good news for the retailer is you're guaranteed to have at least a small number. Let's say I buy the 50 copies or 100 copies that I may or may not be able to sell of the latest issue of X-Men, I am going to be able to order a few copies, handful of the rare variant, and I'll probably be able to move them either in my store, Atomic Avenue, or eBay, wherever the heck I can, and I'll probably make some money on those ones. That's the good news. Hey, I only paid $4.99 for that copy, and I sold it for $35. Hey, terrific! What a profit! Except that in order for that to happen, I also had to take possession of a whole ton of inventory, which I typically buy at about 50% off, but a whole ton of copies that may or may not become my dollar bin stock at the end of the month. And depending on how much you stuff the channel on the whole thing, this could pose a real capital risk for me as a retailer. So when we start talking about, moving in, and I want to give a recent example of this one, and I had the notes bulleted out here. Here we have Marvel. Okay, so across the Absolute line, They sold a total of 8.2 million units across the universe in the first full year. Absolute Batman sold 400,000 over its number one printings. And according to the real shape of the whole thing, and by the way, keep in mind that Diamond, their charts went dark to the press in September of 2025. So these are the brackets. It looks like for you to be on the sales charts, back when we knew what the sales charts were, for you to have a number 11 to 25 bracket book, you were moving about 50 to 65,000 comics. To have a number 26 to 50 bracket book, you're moving about 30,000 comics, and then it falls off. If you have a typical non-event monthly floppy, you're moving it in the low tens of thousands. So if you look at the latest issue of Fury of Firestorm or something like that, that book is moving 10, 20,000 copies on the max. That's not a lot, especially when you compare it to numbers that we saw back in the 2000s, even like the 2010s. That's a huge drop off in the number of actual readers buying your book. And I think somewhere along here, I saw that just the number of store variants alone on the latest issues of Absolute Batman amounted to something like 55,000 variants you had to buy just for the store variants alone. So these aren't additional readers you're looking at here. What you're doing is you're looking at additional inventory that's been shoved into the channel in order to be able to get the special copy for your store, the 1 in 25 copy, the whatever thing like that. So these are all copies. They're basically, unless 200,000 new units, readers, swarm into your comic store that day, these are comics that you're going to be hoping to God to sell out of some kind of back end deal sometime later, but which don't add up to new reader traffic. These guys aren't on people's pull lists in that kind of number. This is mostly a stock problem for you to have, which is not a really particularly healthy way to be running your store, except in the shortest of short terms. And that's really going to be the challenge for folks going ahead. More importantly, I think when you're talking about this end of the comic industry, you're catering to the worst excesses of the speculator mentality and not building readers. What you really want to have happen if, in a healthy market, is you want to have new people be able to walk in, discover your product, check out the first, bit of it at a price which, is conducive to browsing, fall in love with it, and then become that guy who comes back every week. That's the entire model the direct, market was built on. And it's a model that honestly has been cannibalizing itself as fast as it knows how for 15 years or more, just with the rise of variants and just the extreme channel stuffing that we're doing in order to push, essentially the same wrapper on the same book, the same book under like 15 different wrappers. This is what it really comes down to when you talk about the different cover game. And in terms of readers, it's off-putting. And it kind of burns you out. It's fun for a while, and it's fun to collect it and so forth. And God knows it makes it so there's a reason for those 1.2 million covers in ComicBase, but it's exhausting as a fan. And that's why when you look at the growth of manga, you see that manga has taken off in such a huge way. And it's taking that off in that way across what we would call normies. It's people who would walk into a Barnes and Noble or walk into a bookstore, discover One Piece, say, hey, this is cool, and then check out issue number 1, because issue number 1 isn't like a super secret variant collector's edition. It's sitting there right next to issue number 2, 3, 4, up to 103, I believe. It's something like that, right on the shelf right next to it. And you can just go over and start becoming a fan of One Piece. And this is the real secret that manga's had, and it's why manga has, get to the point where it's just blowing out the floppy market in America, even though it comes from basically a foreign culture. American kids had to, they might have grown up on Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman, but they're falling in love with manga in a big way, and they're spending their time and they're spending their money there. And you can measure it in the dollar sales based on how approachable the market is. And it does, dovetail nicely into, readability and fandom and so forth. There have been TV adaptations, there have been anime and so forth that's come along with the whole thing. But the home of American comics. Again, you think about the source superheroes we all grew up on. That one is being shoved aside of late, and I think a lot of us who are old time comic collectors, I mean, I had at one point a full run of Captain America. It's like you almost don't know what to do with yourself because like what's a One Piece, but there's a strength to that market where you come in and you can become a reader and not have to be pre-sold like we all were. That is really strong for that market, and it's really been hugely powerful. If you look at your local Barnes and Noble and just count how many shelves are devoted to all Marvel and DC graphic novels, and count how many shelves are devoted to manga, it's not close. And of late, because I've been sort of doing this experiment, watching over time, it's not getting closer. It's actually going the other way. It's like the shelving space. Whenever I see a new store remodel, because I get to watch a couple different areas of the country, because I've got a place down Florida I get to look at it once in a while, so I can look at the Barnes Noble down there and compare it against the one up down here by Nashville. And wherever I travel, I kind of walk the section and count shelves. And yes, that's how I roll. Just don't judge. But it's as they do store remodels and everything, they might expand the cafeteria, they might expand the board games thing, but what they're not expanding is the amount of space that's left over for American graphic novels. I hope something like the Hachette deal starts moving that back in the other direction, because I gotta say, just culturally, I relate to it more. It's what I grew up on. It's definitely more where I live, and I'd like to see that continue. But like I say, you got to look at just say what are the market strengths that manga brings into the game, and give them credit for what they did. So that is a thing that's there. Now, I've gone into this one beforehand, but it bears talking about. What about bande dessinée, BD, right? So let me get my next slide, which I have. Okay, here we go. You guys probably heard about some of these ones. If you may or may not know Asterix and Obelix, but if you a fan of Mebius or Westerns or anything like that, you might have heard of Blueberry. I hope to God you guys heard about Snowpiercer, which is a fantastic sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi thing. It was made into a pretty good movie a while back. But yes, the French have this lovely thing. Let me get out the. I was doing the research on this one, and let me get out the. See if I can get on screen here. And so the article that caught my attention was La bande dessinée part du marché du livre in France, en français, pourcentage de 10% les mangas, la moitié de la BD vendue 2024. God in heaven. I actually asked the AI, now that I butchered it, to give me the proper pronunciation, and apparently it's La bande dessinée part du marché du livre en France pourcentage la manga la moitié de la BD vendue. Good God. And for those of you who just wonder what the hell's Bickford going on about, it comes down to the comic share of the French book market is 22% manga. Half of all the comics sold are now sorry. So I'm jumping on my own line here. Yes, the French market, 22% of all books sold in France are bande dessinée, and half of all the comics are sold are now manga, which is kind of interesting. It's two trends in one. On one hand, you've got the idea that, like, if you sat there and say 22% of all books sold in America were manga or comics, you'd be like, holy crap, that's amazing. That's being out of the ghetto that all of us comic book people have dreamt of being in all this time. That being said, even in France, the home of Asterix and Obelix and Blueberry and all these things like that, even there, Japanese style manga is becoming a huge part of their market. Fantastic. That being said, is even though you sit there, in one hand, the American part of me says, wait a minute, so well-drawn, interestingly told stories by fantastic artists are sold in an approachable format in my local bookstore. I mean, this is the dream, right? I mean, I would love this. But even they are having a little bit of problem. It's actually falling for the third straight down year. They're down 68 million. They call them albums. They're individual issues. Down 800. It's around 837 euros. Down 9% for the year. By volume, 4% by value. Yes, like us, the prices are going up. So even though the units are falling off, the value isn't falling off quite as much. In 2025, it's a little bit worse. It's down 12.8% by volume, 9.5% by value. And manga is actually the main drag for them. Manga out here is exploding. Our manga is going through the roof. We grew by 8%. They dropped by 9.5%. So it's interesting. Apparently, Demon Slayer and Attack on Titan wrapped up, and it's kind of like when a popular TV show series on Netflix wraps, HBO's viewership drops. They've had the same thing happen with them because manga was such a prevalent thing. But yes, it's interesting is that in the U.S. manga went up, and in France, home of comics, the greatest comic festival in the world. I mean, I've never been, but I hear even bigger than Comic-Con. Even there, their units are going down. So same product, two different directions. Kind of interesting. So let me see. Was there anything else I want to say about that? So let's push on. So what it comes down to is, so what's the future of all this whole thing, right? I mean, you've got three different paths, right? I mean, and here I will temporarily show this kind of atrocious graphic up there, but forgive the graphic, but it does at least show the basic idea. We basically got three big paths going right now, which are, you've got a local comic shop, you've got a bookstore, and you've got direct to fan or direct to consumer. And they're all the comics market. They're all leading comic books to someone who might read them, collect them, do all the things with them. And this is the part where the AI got a little suck-uppy and so forth. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, ComicBase manages them all. Guys, I didn't write that. Just so you know, that was the AI being a suck-up because I was preparing show notes. Literally, it dropped that one for me about 8 minutes before showtime. but the bigger point remains from my notes that I gave it to work from, is that for the first time in a really long time here in America, we have not one way to get comic books. Before I used to be like, I want a comic, I go to a comic store. That's about it. Kickstarter came along, and if you're really a fan, and if you're really new, and if you trusted that they might actually ship the thing, you still can get a comic off Kickstarter. God bless you if you do. And for all the people who submit their Kickstarter comics to us, God bless you every week. We process your corrections. We know how hard that is. I love that Eric July has become very successful running. He didn't even go through Kickstarter. He launched his own distribution company. The first several episodes of his life after he launched were all about how he went through, and he's giving tours of all the shelving racks in his warehouse and talking about all the comic packaging that he's using. We actually got hip to a thing called a Gemini mailer, which maybe you guys have seen or used in recent years, but that basically got invented about 5-6 years ago as a way of securely shipping comic books, and God bless, because we've seen a lot less dented comic books shipped back and forth on Atomic Avenue and with our own life, since that thing came out. The first person I ever saw, who had a Gemini style mailer was Eric July. So, God bless, we're seeing some real innovation in that market, and that's great. But look how hard it is to find. The thing that's new under the sun that we haven't had for a very long time, unless you were already pre-sold, was the ability to walk into a regular normie place, a bookstore, a magazine rack, something like that, pick up something that looks like a comic book, read it, and say, hey, this is cool. I want to take this home. I mean, yes, I love that these things can get into Barnes & Noble now. I will love it even more if they get into my local, magazine rack at the local, supermarket. That would be absolutely freaking terrific. I want to see these on the shelves in Target. I want to see them everywhere there is. I want comics to be everywhere again, because that is how, again, you form a whole new bunch of readers. I love you all, and we've a lot of people listening to the show right now have been lifetime comic book collectors since we were kids ourselves, and a lot of us aren't kids anymore. But I want the new kids to, fall in love with comic books and go on to the new things. So anyway, we've got some real progress in that direction. So it's three roads now. We used to have just two. Mostly had one, and depending on how badly they've been screwed over by distribution or publishers who weren't publishing, or and retailer incentives that were driving them out of business, the one was looking pretty shaky. The local comic store thing. For all the local comic stores, had a great year. Terrific for you. I hope you use the runway you've got to build out new readers, not just new collectors. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here. I mean, I know you guys believe this too, the vast majority of you. But it isn't all just about the shiny variant. It's about, you want a new guy who falls in love with the medium and reads comic books. But I absolutely welcome all the new people who are picking up their first issue of some new, bande dessinée, graphic novel, magazine series, something that's not just a collection of things that existed in floppy form before, who are discovering something new in the field. Welcome all, and I hope you guys pick up the habit for life. I mean, because it's a terrific field, and I never want to see it go away. We've had a good year, but I want it to be just another good year that we build on, and not just the end of something that we channel stuff and then it crashes. That would kind of bum me out. So anyway, that's kind of where we stand right now. Want to know what your thoughts on the whole thing? Please write in, write to the show here. If you comment on the video, certainly that definitely helps. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think as well. But and that's pretty much all I have to say about that. All right. A couple other things on ComicBase, and then we're going to get out of here. By the way, I've been talking for a really long time here, so I do want to say hi to some new folks who came here. Dr. Beat Drums joining us here from Capitola. Brian Price says, Mebius is the man, such an amazing talent. Absolutely. No, everything he touches looks great. I mean, whether it's sci-fi or westerns or whatever else, absolutely amazing. Jay Loving joins us from Texas. Fairfax County, Virginia house with Thomas B. And yeah, welcome everyone. And thank you for hearing me out on this one. Let's anyway, hope this is of interest to people. All right. So ComicBase 26.3. We just released an interim build of that one. If you guys are on the interim release channel, you probably just saw that one come out. We did 26.2.2 was all the topic of last week's live stream about our battle with the progress bar from hell. And so what are we doing 26.3 betas for? Well, because we're always kind of tweaking on things. And one big thing we've done in the road to the next version of ComicBase is we have done an architectural change where if you guys have ever gotten a .NET error in your life, hopefully that's the last one you see. We have basically taken a big architectural run through across all of ComicBase to do two things. I mean, bad things do happen. People shut down their disk drives when they shouldn't. They turn off monitors. They kill their internet connections. I mean, you are going to see errors in your life if you work with computers. That is a thing. And we've tried, over the years to get a little better on how we deal with it, but we've gotten considerably better. And we've laid out some better architecture for dealing with the whole thing going forward between the 26.2 release and what will eventually be the last quarterly release for ComicBase 2026. Now, granted, these are all interim releases. There will not be an official pushed ComicBase 26.3 release for some time. We're just in early stages. But if you are on the interim release channel, just to let you know what's going on, there's a couple kind of cool things. And let me tell you about the biggest one, architectural. The reason it's a 0.3 is because we have kind of globalized our error handling. So not only do we have catches right at the usual things, like when we try to open the database and see, can I read this thing right there? If it can, it tells you right there. But if somehow something bad happens across the whole program that we didn't know before, it does two things it didn't used to do before. And if you ever saw the .NET error has occurred in your application, you want to continue or run, those were the errors we weren't thinking could ever happen, which happened to you anyway. There's now a global catch-all to that one, and more importantly, it now also globally gives you a debug trace. So if something weird does happen on your machine at any point in the future, you now can go in the logs folder. That's C:\ComicBase\logs. And we've even cleaned up that folder a little bit now. So instead of just being all the content update logs that ever happened, that starting with the 26.3 betas or interim releases that we're doing here, it actually, if anything bad happens, it'll actually record a detailed log you can give to our techs here so we can investigate what the cause was. Even if you never wrote down the message or did all the things, you've got a way to get help on that one. And then we've got a way to make sure that whatever error that we thought could never have happened, which happened to you anyway, we've got a way of making sure it doesn't happen to the next guy. So it's like, this is the kind of stuff that, like, if we were Microsoft, this kind of stuff would have been the product 100 years ago. We are a small company, but we've been doing a lot of, we've been performing miracles with a very small staff for a long time now. But this is part of us growing up. Is we're getting a lot more measured, a lot more thoughtful about these kind of like big infrastructure type issues. And you'll see more of this in the future. But that is why this one is a 0.3 release. Other things are happening, and this is like having to do with features, which is always much more fun to talk about than stuff like that. Let's see if I can go to let's go to title like have I got like say Birds of Prey. Let's go to a series that I think, I just got told. All right, so let me tell you what I'm doing here. So going over here to Birds of Prey. If you guys remember down here in the bottom right-hand corner, you can say whether or not you include the newsstand issues and so forth. Here, this isn't a newsstand issue. Let me see if I can. Have I got one here that we found out recently that we thought, oh yeah, here we go. Perfect. Birds of Prey 3rd series. It was thought initially that there were newsstand issues of these ones. Turns out when it was researched, I believe it was Rob Weinberg reported, nope, turned out they never put out newsstand editions of these ones at all. And so if you were caught in this one and you wanted to say, hey, I want to select all of them and delete them or do things like that, a little inconvenient. You'd have to select these guys over here, select the next one down here, select the next one down here. We've done a couple of just little tweaky nice things about the whole thing. You now can click on the picture and sort by whether or not the thing has a picture. Which it almost, when you say it out loud, it almost sounds obvious. It was not obvious. And also you can sort, click on the media icon. So if you've got, for instance, a lot of digital comic books, you want to say, which ones don't I have digital comic books for? You can click on the media icon and have the list sort by whether or not you've got a digital comic version of it attached. So yeah, and do that. Once you've done that, then just, highlight, scrape down, grab all the ones that didn't have pictures, and you instantly know where you're going. Neat, fun feature. Surprisingly useful for dumb things like this. With that said, by the way, slight cameo, not cameo, slight, what do you call the thing where it's just like the distraction? It's a non sequitur, except I'm sequiting. One thing that came up, I was doing corrections today, and we'll run some stats on that in a second here, because I asked the AI to crawl through all of our recent, program and stat changes and just give me a summary. And so it's kind of neat. I like sharing this kind of, meaningless noise with you guys. But anyway, in the middle of running through the thousands of corrections I was, pounding through this morning, I got a guy who said like, hey, this series was never published, and why don't you guys check this stuff? You guys are jerks. It's like, okay, rude, but but just to give a perspective on what the corrections looks like from back in the whole thing. Say, why would a database company about comic books, why would you make a stupid mistake like saying that there will be a series from Marvel? I think it was like amazing, Spider-Man Symbi or something. Why would you have information on it when it never got published? The answer is because the publisher sent us information saying, yeah, we're about to publish this. As soon as we've got the solicitation from them saying we're going to publish it, we put it in a ComicBase so that if you get to the store and you want to log in, hey, I just bought the thing, you don't need for us to have bought a copy of the book and for you to put your stuff in. I mean, you can catalog it right away. And matter of fact, if you're preparing an order form for the store, you could do it right off of the solicitation. That's why we index things a couple months before they actually ship. It turns out we publish, and you guys are probably going to see them in this next week's update, we get something on the order average about, I want to say about 2,700 items per day. We slacked off a bit from our high points of the early spring, where some days we were averaging about 6,000 items a day, but we get about 2,700 items a day of new information from publishers, our own editors, from submissions that you guys do and so forth. It's a lot to deal with. And you know what they don't do is they don't tell us when something they sent us is turning out that we're not going to publish after all. That's not a message that typically comes to us. So when it turns out we got something wrong, and it's out, I'm going to call it out of band. When it's something like, it's not just a, hey, look, you submitted that, this guy was going to do the art and it turns out this other guy did the art. Just go ahead and correct it in your copy for that one, submit as new or corrected data. We can, process that kind of thing very efficiently. But if it's something like, yeah, no, you have the completely wrong cover for this, or it turns out that this variant over here that they said they were going to publish, turns out that they never published it, something like that. Like when it's a non-thing, it's not a correction to a thing, it's a non-thing. Best thing to do really on that is to send a note to support@comicbase.com, because what that does is it just stops our editors and they say, "Whoa, what's this?" And it breaks the pattern. They're not just robotically saying, "All right, yeah, what do I got to do to get the next one done here?" They're saying, "Oh, this is something that's completely different than all the others, and let me handle this." So in order for those sorts of things to not get lost, yeah, I mean, for most normal things, the most efficient way to get them into ComicBase is exactly what I said before, is put them into your copy of ComicBase, highlight the issue and say submit new or corrected data. But if it's something like oh yeah, that thing never got published, or oh no, that cover is somehow completely wrong, that's really the best thing for that, is to go ahead and send a note straight to support. So support@comicbase.com, and that's really is the best pro tip to make sure that does not get lost. All right, so let's see here, and someone gave me a thumbs up. I don't know if that's the guy who sent the thing in or not, but anyway, but all right, cool. And by the way, since we're getting to the top of the hour here, I do want to give the standard ComicBase announcements here. If I get my mouse on the right screen so I can scroll. I do want to say, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're watching the post live stream, please post comments. We dig that kind of thing. It does help, let people know about, the stream if they haven't heard about us before. It's that whole discoverability thing that we hear so much about. Don't forget also that we have ComicBase message boards over at forums.comicbase.com. And also we have a dedicated thread on the forums for live stream topics. So you can suggest those, look for demos or whatever else. And don't forget about Atomic Avenue. Again, if you're looking for that rare copy of that thing that you haven't found, includes just pretty much one of everything, because that's how we buy things for ComicBase. Yes, just look over there first. You can even link to it from ComicBase. Just click on the issue in ComicBase. If you've got the graph showing, you can go straight to it. It'll show you what that issue is selling for and all the different grades. Great way to do shopping and filling out those wish lists. So yeah, give it a go. All right. Other things I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. Let me see here. So we talked about the .NET error thing. We talked about the sorting thing. There will undoubtedly be other things that creep into the 26.3 series before we're all said and done with it. And then I also mentioned that we're cleaning up the logs folder, so it's just become like one big sloppy list of content update logs. Other things are happening from the board this week. Let's see here. We did some improvements to how ComicBase displays on high DPI monitors. So if you've got a 4K monitor and you've been squinting to look at things, and so you use magnification on things, ComicBase looks just that little extra bit better now. That's a thing that happened. And I'm not going to talk about that. It's too much. Sorry. And just looking at voluminous things here. Yes. So I asked Slack to help me do my show prep, and one of the things that we did to help it on the whole thing is I'd given a list of bullet points of what I want to talk about. And I said, yeah, grab me the stats from our servers lately to say, what have we done this last week? And apparently 12,655 corrections submitted in the last 7 days from 72 different contributors across 1,488 titles. 1,000 as showtime. 12,576 were already processed, 79 still in the queue. And that makes it actually one of our lighter weeks. And the top hand this week, I didn't even ask it to compute this, but it did anyway. Alan E. gets the award this week with 3,239 submissions. The most submitted one was Batman 3rd Series. God only knows why. But that's a thing that happened. Oh, I'm sorry. And I promised to cover this one last week, and I didn't. And I almost forgot about. That's what show notes are for, and I even made a graphic about it. So let me go ahead and cover this now, because I don't want to forget about it for a second week in a row. I just need to find the right graphic and get it onto the monitor. Yes, here we are, Doom Quest. How the heck do you catalog a blind bag is the question on this one. And I believe Alan DeCamp was the one who asked the question on this one, and I'm happy to finally answer it. If you guys remember Doom Quest #1, this is the one that came out as a collector's set. It included a copy of Doom Quest #1, mostly with a cover by Alex Ross, sometimes with a rare variant-y whatever kind of cover. You didn't know till you opened the box. Always came with a Doom face mask, and also a random copy of one of about 6 different reprinted comics it might come up with. So how the hell do you catalog this thing? And it was a really interesting one because I'd say it's like the Schrodinger's cat of comic collectibles, but it was even worse because depending on what it was, it might be an octopus in there, not a cat. It was like you didn't know what you got until you opened the bag. So it was really quite the thing. And it came down to this: the unopened comic collector's thingy. The Doom Quest collector's set is 1/CS for collector's set. It's in there. It costs like $9.95, and as long as it's never been opened, it's still a collector's set. And it better have all the stuff in it too, otherwise it's not there. Once it's opened, like a quantum particle being observed for the first time, it magically transmutes into several different things. If you take the whole thing and you stick it back in the bag and you mark in your notes, I opened it and it really has this in it, by all means go ahead and sell it used on the system as a collector's set. But note what you got, because again, you've removed the element of quantum chance from the equation on this one. So if it actually has been opened, you should tell people, like, because it really, you're not selling them the same thing, because the open thing and the unopened thing, by the act of observing it, just like a quantum particle resolving its state, it has actually changed to a different thing. That being said, this particular one is also like 3 different things, 2 of which we track, 1 of which we don't. The thing we do not track is we do not track the Doom face mask. There is no place on Atomic Avenue where you can sell Doom face masks. It's not a book. It's not a magazine. It's not a comic book. It's not a newspaper. So those are the only things we know how to sell on Atomic Avenue right now. So you're on your own. I'd say give it, put it on your kid, wear it as a Halloween prank, whatever you want. The Doom face mask is yours, but it is no longer a comic booky type thing. For myself, I actually stuck the thing in my copy of Doom Quest #1, and just noted that I'd stuck the free face mask in there for free. Now, this particular one, though, it wasn't a single comic book. It was an unknown collection of different things. Depending, if I had gotten the regular, blind bag, which it turned out I did, I happened to get a copy of the Alex Ross cover of Doom Quest #1. I got a Doom face mask, #2, and I got a copy of like a facsimile edition of like Fantastic Four 235. That was in my particular bag. So when I put these into my collection, I stuck the face mask inside my issue of #1 as a free giveaway. I logged this. I now have a copy of Doom Quest #1, Alex Ross cover. That's issue #1. I think it goes for about $5 now on ComicBase. And I have a copy of the facsimile edition of Fantastic Four #435. So it's 435A or whatever it is, which goes for, as it turns out, about $5. You put the 2 together, it's worth the $10 I paid, and somebody gets a free face mask. Now, I could have gotten there's a very, very rare chance I could have gotten a number of insanely obscurely valuable, facsimile, remark, whatever covers of Doom Quest #1. These ones, as they get to be known by anyone, become variants of Doom Quest #1, which I didn't personally get, but someone got them. And if they sell them, they're selling just that one. They're not selling that plus the face mask plus the other thing. They're selling just that. So that becomes one variant. The other thing is whatever other bonus comic they threw in, and they had facsimile editions of like half a dozen comic books that you might have gotten as your second item. That is another variant item, which is not related once you've opened the bag. So in summary, the whole thing, bag sealed, everything all together, that is one item. That is Doom Quest #1/CS, and is very important for preserving the integrity of its quantum state. The bag cannot have been opened. As soon as you've opened it, again, it is no longer really the collector's set #1. I think you'll get away with it as long as you notate exactly what you put in your bag. But honestly, if you sell that this thing is a near mint copy of the Alex Ross cover, and a near mint face mask, and near mint copy of whatever variant thingy you got as the bonus copy, and you don't tell the person you're selling it to that the bag has not been opened, the thing that you're not selling them, which they have a right to have bought, is you're not selling them the chance. Again, it's a small chance, but you're not selling them the chance by selling them that 1CS that it had one of the super special editions in it. So if you did open it, I think it's fair. Go ahead, just note it was opened. It has all the stuff, but this is the stuff it has. Go ahead and sell it, used as a used version of the collector's set. But you must mark that it was opened, because the opened is not equal to the unopened state in this particular case. And otherwise, you could also say, heck with the mask, don't care. That's what I did. And then say, I now have two things. I have some kind of Doom Quest and I have some kind of variant. Sell them, and there you now bought a bundle of two different things, as well as a spare face mask you can give to your dog. So that is the long story of how the hell to deal with collector set blind bags. So anyway, hope that makes sense for you. Thank you, Alan DeCamp, for waiting on that one. Thank you for asking the question. It's a great question. And Chris Bristol says Brownie in motion. Yeah, Schrodinger's comic. And Talergy, well, it made it to the live version. Welcome. Anyway, guys, I think it's pretty much everything I want to talk about this time out. There's lots more stuff on the news, but hopefully, I hope this format works for people. I hope the idea of doing it on Thursday works for folks. I'm kind of digging it. And honestly, I love having the staff, where basically having Claude as my monkey slave to say, hi, I really need you to go grab me the latest stats. And it just does it. That part of the show prep, it's almost, it makes me want to put on a better show, because it's like, oh, wait, I can't just waltz in here 10 minutes beforehand and say, I did some stuff this week. It's nice to actually have the figures at your beck and call. So that's pretty neat. But yeah, no, in summary, I'd written to myself, so Death of Comics? Nah, it'll be fine. But no, the truth is, comics actually are doing pretty good right now. Let's use it. Let's use this great year we had last year in 2025 and build more readers, because that's how we're going to be fine next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. It's not going to be based off of some kind of collectible thingy. It's not going to be based off of blind bags. It's not going to be based off, like we all like making money. We all like selling commerce, things like that. But the things that keeps the industry alive, things that keeps comics alive, is new readers. You got to be able to read the things you're selling. Otherwise, we're just trading shiny trinkets, and that's no fun. Who wants to do that, right? All right, guys, I will see you on the next one. Take care. You have a good one. Bye-bye.